This is a super quick explanation of the beginning of Neo-Aristotelian criticism. It's often the first way that I teach students to conduct rhetorical criticism. I like it because it gives you a systematic way to take a look at that artifact, to um, turn that artifact around, look at it upside down, backwards, inside out, and be able to discover new ideas, new patterns of thinking that you haven't before. So I think this is a great way to start. Now, first of all, Neo-Aristotelian criticism, essentially it's what I call the first type of rhetorical criticism. It came about in the 1920s, and it was really used just to analyze speeches, but it later has been used to describe all different types of artifacts. And I'll let you read the assignment for the most part on your own with some of that in there. What I wanted to do was explain some of the things that we talked about in class that might not be as clear if you are just reading the sheet. All right, when you are first getting your artifact, you want to apply the canons of rhetoric. This consists of the 5 canons, which are invention, organization, style, delivery, memory. I'm just going to deal with invention and organization in this quick lecture. So invention. The most important idea in this, I think, is that we start out with this idea of topoi. Topoi is roughly translated to topic in English, but it's a word that has so much more meaning behind it than English does. The topoi is almost this idea that there is a place that you go to in your head that provides the topic. It's almost like there is a physical place. And so when you're looking for toy, you have to kind of investigate the rooms of your brain, open up a door, a filing cabinet, and you find these topics, these commonplaces that you're going to look at. And so when we're applying this idea, we're going to look at what influenced the rhetor to discuss this idea, this topic, to bring it up to, why would they paint about it? Why would they write a song about it? Why would they make a movie, etc., all those different types of things. And you can consider the rhetor to be either the person who created this artifact, or it could be a main character that's in the piece of rhetoric that you are going to be analyzing, and it could be both as well. So you're going to take a look at the topoi, what causes this idea, this topic for this person at that time. Stasis and exigency. These are mixed a lot in how they work together. Exigency. Basically, there's something that's unbalanced in the world of this artifact. And I want you to imagine a set of scales, not the scales that we use for our weight today, but a set of scales that perhaps Lady Justice uses, where there are 2 plates on either side, and the plate that has something on it that weighs more will drop down closer to the ground, and if they're balanced, those 2 plates will be equal. So think of that. Exigency is there is something that's happening, something that's currently in the situation that's unbalanced, and it means that there is a necessity to respond in some way. So we look at what is the exigency behind this particular artifact, and again, it could be the creator or it could be a character. What's happening? How have things become unbalanced? Stasis is the idea of balancing. Stasis, if you think again of that scale, the top middle part where the scale balances at the top, that's the stasis, and you want to have the stasis in your life, in your work, and so we have to say, how do we, excuse me there for, I had to turn it on pause for a moment. All right, so the stasis is this desire for balance. It's this part of the scale where the balance actually occurs. And it's just a small piece on a scale, that very top part And it's not large. It's this very small piece that has to be kind of pinpointed and very carefully rest on that. So what happens in the text that corrects imbalance or might correct an imbalance? And is it corrected? Is it balanced, or is it left to be unbalanced? What are the implications of that? So those are the things that we're looking at. So in your piece, look at that situation. Where did the writer go to find the topic? What's the imbalance, and how do you create the balance? Then, essentially, you have an argument in every piece of rhetoric. It could be implied, or it could be very clearly stated. It could be intentional or unintentional, but there is an argument within the world of this artifact that argues that this is the way it is or isn't, or the way it should be, the way it shouldn't be. So when you look at let's say, a painting, and you look at this, and is this painting this vision of a utopian life? And if so, we take a look at what are these elements of that perfect utopian life. Is this a piece of artwork that tells us that the utopian life has no, let's say it's a family at the seashore, and they're running around in bare feet. Does that mean that there's no technology in the utopian life?
Isn't that mine?
So there are these arguments whether or not the person who created this painting intended to make a statement about not having technology in a perfect life. It's still there to be found, and as a rhetorical analyzer, a rhetorical critic, it's your job to get in there and see what the message is and what arguments there are for it or against it. You present this to your reader, and your reader decides if you've done a good job proving your point or not. Essentially, we usually look at artistic proofs, which include logos, ethos, and pathos. You've covered these in public speaking before, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but is the argument a logical argument? Is it about ethics or credibility? Is it an emotional argument? And take a look about that. How is stasis achieved? And then organization. Number of things we look at here, but first of all, we look at the introduction or the very beginning of a book. Aristotle talks about this as exordium, which literally translates into the web. And just like a spider creates this web and kind of entices that fly to go into it and get stuck and not be able to leave, no matter how much the fly struggles, it's still there. It's how the reader, the person who sends the message, and usually by this we mean the creator, how do they draw you, the receiver, the audience, into the web? So how does this begin? What draws you into it? Or does it draw you into it? Is there a situation? Is there a quote? Is there something shocking, something that gets you to identify? Is there a color? Is there a particular type of music? But how do they draw you into the web? You're the fly, and your artifact is the web. So look at your artifact and how does it draw people into it. Then we look at the structure. Is there a chronological structure, topical structure, mixed? And why? What does it tell you about this particular piece? If it's chronological, is it important that it is? Is it based on one person's life in a particular time period? Or is this something that could be told regardless of the time period? Are there flashbacks? Is the argument kind of created from let's say, from how an older person processes the past? So past lessons weren't learned while they were being lived, but 20, 30, 50 years later, they're processed and understood and then relayed. So those are the types of things we're going to look at with the organization. Does it have something in common with other works that are out there or not? So a lot of things we can look. Is there anything about the structure that impacts perception of the story that makes it easy to understand, not easy to understand, those types of things. So your job at this point is to dig into this work. I want you to be looking and researching all those ideas for invention, and I want you to be looking, researching, and thinking about the organization ideas. And this is where you'll be beginning the rhetorical analysis. So dig into your work and ask me if you have any questions. Thanks. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.